Hello and welcome back to Whence, your weekly Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. I'm your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Well, we have a long show for you this week. I had a lengthy phone call with Brother Charles Harper about his writing and specifically his new book, Freemasonry in Black and White. We'll get right into that in a moment. I wanted to say I received some big feedback. Apparently our audio has been consistently low on every episode, which was a bummer. So I guess I have to turn it up. I hope you have noticed that the audio is louder and more consistent this week, and it will consistently be at that level. I am not, however, going to be able to go back and fix the past 88 episodes. I don't have the resources for that. You'll have to just crank it up. Speaking of audio, I want to also mention that we are using the Google Voice for interviews. I know it isn't the best, but I hope you guys don't mind. It's the best I can do until I find a free way to do it, which is better, or a setup which records right off my phone. So without further delay, here is the interview with Brother Charles Harper from earlier this week. All right, everyone. We're speaking with a brother who has been through the York and Scottish Rites and is active in the AMD. He's a writer for the Living Stones magazine and most recently published author. Please welcome Brother Charles Harper to the show. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good, brother. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, no worries. It was kind of exciting to see that when you got a Facebook page up and going. I had seen you at the Scottish Rite Valley of Chicago a few times and overheard some of the conversations you were having. You very intelligent stuff, and I was really excited, like I said, when I finally got to talk to you and meet you up at the Rite there. So thanks again.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
So as I said, everybody, I met Brother Harper at the Valley of Chicago Scottish Rite. We kind of started corresponding on Facebook, and he's actually one of the moderators, I think, right? You guys have a few moderators of the Freemasons page. That's
yes, it's a Facebook Freemasonry page. I'm one of there's two moderators and one administrator, which is Brother Jeff Henson from Western Springs Lodge, and we moderate the page for him.
Very cool. You guys are always having some really neat stuff up there. It's always enjoyable to see the different lodge pictures you're posting. And you guys really do a lot of traveling around. You guys were among some of the people who went down to Washington, D.C., yeah?
Oh, yes. We the Valley of Chicago did a joint reunion with the Valley of D.C. in the fall of 2011. In fact, it was their last out-of-town reunion trip with the opening of the new Scottish Rite Cathedral in Bloomingdale, Illinois. So it was an incredibly educational trip.
Yeah, if anybody listening, you get a chance, you got to check out Freemasonry's page, and it's actually is it Freemasons or Freemasonry?
It's Freemasonry. It's the word Freemasonry, but there's a space between free and masonry.
Yep, that's what I figured. So, if you guys are listening, you check out www.facebook.com/free-masonry, and you guys should be able to pull up some of the pictures these guys post. They're incredible. They've been around. The pictures are great. But let's talk a little bit about your writing. You seem to really have a knack for writing, especially about some very real issues within Freemasonry today, things that most people might not talk too much about, things that are the foundation of Freemasonry today, like lodge visitations, inspirational work, recognition issues that are going on in different states with the shrine and all that stuff. And the list goes on. And you in particular are very much living in the now as far as Freemasonry goes.
Well, I believe that Freemasonry is at a state now where it's undergone some stagnation. It's gone from 3 million Freemasons in the United States alone down, and that number is split in half to about 1.5 million today. And the issues that are surrounding the fraternity are rearing their heads here and there, and I don't believe that they're being given enough attention because I think people tend to be too worried about how the issues are going to be perceived. And rather than confront the issues, it seems that sometimes they're subdued in hopes to just be more politically correct. But I personally feel that the issues that are floating around in the fraternity need to be reckoned with if we're going to progress. You know, it's approaching the reality of what's going on versus hoping to be politically correct and just present the positive outlook of it is going to somehow help the fraternity grow.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, you guys, I noticed in a lot of your writing, you talk about a lot of the negative things that are going on, but you pick it up at the end with some optimistic notes and stuff. And anybody listening, if you guys check out the Living Stones magazine, you'll notice that he really does focus on the modern day Masonic issues. And we got to talking actually a little bit about some of the problems and some of the almost racial tension kind of things that were going on with a Facebook post that you had talked about. And I mean, if you don't mind.
Oh no, not at all. You know that I feel that the taboo is that some of these things are not supposed to be talked about publicly, and to a certain extent, they shouldn't have to be. But when these issues, these race issues, present themselves publicly, I feel it is the duty of Masons to educate a solution to these now prevalent public problems. When we first started the Facebook page, we ensured that we posted everything relevant to the universality of Freemasonry. Freemasonry in India, in Australia, Freemasons in Japan, and other countries. And we had an altercation pretty soon into the page where Brother Reginald Johnson of Ben-Hur Lodge and myself were depicted in a picture in front of the Valley of Chicago on the day that the building was dedicated. I believe it was March 17th. Yeah. And some of the responses that we received from that publicly were those of racial separation.
When you first started telling me, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had heard stories about, some places in the South where there was still some racial tensions in lodges and big-time separation, but I had no idea, on a public forum and as many fans as you guys had that you would find that kind of negativity.
It was jarring, to say the least. It was jarring. There are public. Well, let me start back. The people that were posting, initially, you would think that they were not Masons. The language that they were using was not typical one would expect from a Mason. But they also signed their names with their lodge names and numbers attached to their racial statements of, blacks and whites do not mix in lodge. One person placed his name, the lodge, and his lodge number, and said if a black member ever became a member of their lodge, they would quit Masonry. And I was shocked that they attached their lodge name and number to their quote with their actual name. And we went in to ensure that these were not just people who were not Masons posting things to cause some kind of rift. We were able to go to their lodge's websites, their official websites, and these persons were actual officers in a lodge.
Wow.
And our jaws hit the floor. It's
incredible. I mean, what we go through today, we teach the tolerance and the equality, universality of Masonry. It boggles my mind, the kind of comments that you guys got. I mean, I've got three boys. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and
my kids don't know race at all. I mean, if they describe somebody
Absolutely.
as white or black, it's because that's the only way they know how to say something about somebody. It's not. It has no kind of a racial issue attached to it, and you know, it's just as progressive as our generation is. It was astounding to me that you guys had any kind of issues with that. And
well, I believe that, and this is one of the articles that I wrote for the Living Stones. It was entitled "Racism or Cultural Differences."
Yes.
Now, I don't believe that Masons, even in lodges where they may not be proactive as far as having other ethnicities as members in their lodges, are practicing racism. I believe that some people who are Masons in lodges do not conceive that some of the things that they are saying or practicing can be taken as racism.
Sure.
It could be lent cultural differences, and and those having apprehension to delving into different cultures and experiencing different cultures. They may be, like I gave in a lecture once, I explained the importance of visitation and how important it is for one person to remain just within their lodge and the comforts of their lodge is similar to if anyone has ever done construction. If you excavate dirt in the middle of the wintertime and there's a foot of snow on the ground, and you cover that snow with the dirt that you've excavated, and you cover enough dirt on that snow will still be there in 90-degree weather in the wintertime. I mean, in the summertime, when all of the snow surrounding that dirt pile has melted away. You can peel back the dirt, and there'll still be snow there. Well, if a person, a Mason, is a member of a lodge, and he never takes the advantage of the rights and privileges of a Master Mason to travel in foreign countries, meaning foreign jurisdictions, or just lodges other than their own, they blanket themselves similar to a pile of dirt on top of the snow. They place themselves in a cocoon of sorts where their ideas are not challenged. Their convictions are not measured against something foreign to their own. And I think that's a majority of the problem is the cultural difference. But there was a situation in Atlanta, Georgia with Gate City Lodge number 2, where a man of African American descent was raised a Master Mason in the lodge, and the lodge and the master of the lodge had unmasonic conduct charges filed against them by 2 other lodges. And the charges, it became very public. It actually, I believe it was the DeKalb County Courthouse where the charges had to be filed against the Grand Lodge of Georgia by this lodge placed under unmasonic conduct charges. Because in the Constitution and bylaw, it stated that a lodge could not make a non-white man a Master Mason, and this was in 2007.
Right, in this age of progression and acceptance, I mean, you still have these blemishes here and there, and it's just bad news.
It is, and I think the problem is not Masonry. Masonry is the solution to these problems, and more specifically, the study and understanding of the several educational and philosophical symbolism that we're taught in our ritual, liberal arts and sciences in particular, guide how to disseminate knowledge, how to exclude emotional conclusions to ascertain facts without bias. And I think some of the lessons are left at the catechism stage and not purposely pursued further, and conclusions, I think, are drawn based out of incomplete knowledge on most of these cases.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you'll see nowadays, you get a catechism book and they read it and they memorize it, but it's not until maybe a year, maybe 2 years after you've seen the degree happen and you start to almost accidentally memorize everything that happens that you start thinking about it over and over in your head and breaking it down and then realizing, 2 years later what you were taught, and then you go, well, have I been applying that these last 2 years? Maybe, maybe not.
Absolutely.
So,
I think when I was memorizing ritual, every word that I came to that I was not familiar with, I went to the dictionary. I found the word, and then I had to not only find the word as it is defined today, but our ritual was written in 1766.
Right.
So the definition of today may not be specifically applicable to that word in the context that it is meant in our ritual. So
right.
It's always a case of reflection and going further, as we say.
Absolutely. I did want to say, these kind of things, this racial divide and this cultural differences issue, we got to talking a little bit, and you have a book coming out.
I do.
Let's talk a little bit about your new book.
Okay. Well, the book is entitled Freemasonry in Black and White.
Okay.
It is right now it's in the editing stage. This book took me about 3 years to write because I was really apprehensive as to how to state certain things that I feel the fraternity as a whole may want to pay more attention to without offending my brethren. Because at the end of the day, we are all Masonic brothers. And
absolutely,
the goal of whispering advice to a brother is to help and never to hinder. So like you say, in a lot of things that I speak about in my articles and so forth, I state a problem as I perceive it, but I give a Masonic solution to that problem that I think would address that problem. So in saying that, the book, what I go into the book is I approach things that are both publicly and not so public myths and facts, and I try to disseminate between the two. I start out very general.
I was just say, as we were talking about, when we were down at the Valley, we were talking about how it's sometimes hard to ride that line between doing exactly what you said, of whispering good advice to a brother without offending. And it's really funny. A friend of mine told me a long time ago that a friend will tell you how great you did, but a great friend has no problem telling you where you need to improve yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I attended the, I think it was the 2011 Grand Master's Town Hall meeting in Champaign last year. And the Grand Master of our Grand Lodge of Illinois, Terry Seward, said something that I hadn't thought about before. He said, 99% of the problems in the fraternity can be solved if we remember brotherly love. If we execute our decisions, our meanings to assist, if we give attention to the problems in the spirit of brotherly love, most often you can find a solution. And that's what spurred me to go ahead and complete the book. Because that's what it's ultimately about.
The final push,
The final push. The fraternity is bigger than one subordinate lodge or even one Grand Lodge, though the Grand Lodges each are sovereign. The fraternity is worldwide. And I think each individual Mason has to approach the decisions that they make that ultimately affect each other from the determination of what they believe is going to benefit the fraternity as a whole, ultimately. It's almost having a tunnel that you're traveling, but you have to be able to see the end where you want to go.
Right, and it can be a problem in the sense that anybody who is, I want to say, well, I'll use the term misguided, who gets any kind of position of power might not exactly have the best, isn't thinking about, as my friend Brother Robert Lewis would say, knock-on effects. Not what immediately happens, but what happens 16 steps down the line.
Absolutely. In fact, you said a good reference. Brother Matt Nelson, I believe he belongs to a lodge in Utah, recently published a book called 5 Steps to Lodge Reformation. And in that, he does speak about the vision of a leader in lodges having the pursuit of what's going to happen 15 years from now as their goal so that they can make adjustments during the meantime to attain that goal. And that's what I did with this book. I started with my very humble beginnings in Masonry. Most people don't know, but I began my Masonic career in 2004, actually in a clandestine lodge, right down in Kankakee, Illinois. And as you know, most people come into Masonry, you don't always know what is defined as a regularly accepted lodge or constituted lodge. You don't know any of these things. You see a honest, man walking there with a square and compass on, and you say, wow, that guy seems like a good guy, and I want to do what they're doing. And you ask them to be one, ask one, and that's what I did. But I started to see some instances where the things that they were doing were not the things that my father's a Mason as well, were not things that I saw my father doing. And it started to raise flags, and you start to do some research, and you start to discover that you're not in the place that you thought you were. You don't have rights and privileges. I will say one of the things that I benefited from that experience, though, when we speak of humble beginnings, because I couldn't visit another lodge or speak to other Masons, I was forced to read about Masonry, read about philosophy and symbolism, because that's all I had. So I think in those 4 years I must have read over 20 books on Masonry.
You were in a clandestine lodge for 4 years, huh?
For 4 years, from 2004 until actually 2009, 5 years. I was master of the lodge by 2008, and I left that lodge seeking to become a regular Master Mason in 2009, in the summer of 2009. One of the things I'll tell you where I was not prohibited, but I was cautioned against seeking other lodges was I was told that the lodge here in Kankakee, Illinois, where I'm a member now, Kankakee Lodge number 389, I was told that there were a racist lodge. And that kept me from investigating on becoming a member, actually. So after reading all of these books, I said to myself, Freemasonry can't contain racism as these members are saying. There has to be something to that. So part of me petitioning the lodge was to challenge the institution of Masonry in itself. And I said to myself, if this lodge is a racist lodge and they only let white members in, there's no way that they're even going to let me fill out a petition.
Right.
And not only did I get to fill out a petition and ultimately join, and I talk about this in my book, one of the past masters of the lodge, I broached the subject with him, and I asked him why hadn't they had any other men of African American descent become members? And he said, frankly, Charlie, we've only had one petition, and he was just not a suitable man. Comes to find out that there was and there is now again a Prince Hall affiliated lodge that meets in Kankakee, and the lodge for several years had to meet in Joliet because they didn't have a temple to meet in here in Kankakee. Several of the past masters of that lodge and the past masters of our lodge have been friends for over 20 years.
Yeah, it's kind of neat because I didn't know actually too much about Prince Hall Masonry until shortly after I received my third degree, which was 2007. And it was interesting because the reason I actually had asked about it was I asked about clandestine lodges. And the secretary of my lodge said they don't last too long around this area when they pop up. And they said, well, do you guys just jump down on their throats or whatever and shut them down? And he said, well, we don't, but the Prince Hall Lodge in Waukegan does. And I had no idea that. He said the Prince Hall Lodge in Waukegan is very active and very aggressively going after a clandestine organization. And so it kind of prompted me to learn a little bit more about the Prince Hall side of things. And when I heard that Prince Hall is, they got a charter and we never did, and then it dawned on me, I go, why does any lodge have a problem with Prince Hall Masonry? I mean, if anything, we're lucky that they recognize us in some places.
Yeah, yes. Well, the problem here is that in I know for Illinois, in fact, there are 57 clandestine Grand Lodges in Chicago alone.
Wow.
And they are predominantly African American clandestine Grand Lodges that Prince Hall members have to contend with because they are in fact stealing, and I'll say it because that is what it is, they're stealing potential good men from becoming either Prince Hall Masons or members of our Grand Lodge, and they're joining these other lodges because they do not explain to them their positions of their jurisdictional regularity.
Right.
They have no idea at all until they're confronted out in the public by either a Prince Hall member or a member of any regular lodge. When they're greeted as a brother and they state where they're from, we don't know because they're not listed anywhere in a list of lodges as regular lodges.
Right.
So these gentlemen have to go basically what I went through. They have to, one, they're not going to believe anything somebody else just says. So they have to, because they came in under an auspice of trust as we did. So the first thing that they do is they go back and they say, hey, this guy said I wasn't a Mason. And they'll say, no, you're a Mason. Well, why did he say that I wasn't a Mason and I can't visit their lodge? And they'll say, well, you can visit their lodge. If they choose not to allow you in, then that is on their own accord, which is a manipulation of the modes of recognition to allow a Mason to visit a lodge. So it's
exactly,
and the problem is, it doesn't just affect Prince Hall Masonry. It affects the other Grand Lodge, Grand Lodge of Illinois and all the other U.S. Grand Lodges. It's a problem that it affects everyone.
Yeah,
it affects everyone.
57 lodges and Grand Lodges that are clandestine in Chicago alone. That is astounding to me. If you took into consideration that if each one of those has even 20 members, that's that many good men that aren't, contributing to recognized fraternity.
Absolutely.
It's a shame.
And the ramifications of it are present, I believe, in the South, the Grand Lodge of Texas, the Grand Lodge of Kentucky. They both have recognition with the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of their state, their counterpart, but they don't have visitation. And I said to myself, why would you not want visitation? And I began to ponder, could this be some of the reason why some of the Grand Lodges in the southern states do not want to have recognition with the Prince Hall affiliated lodges?
Right.
I don't know. And it's very difficult to get a response because it's such a topic of taboo. no one wants to talk about it. And I feel at this point, it's 2013, we need to talk about it.
It's the elephant in the room, you know. Nobody wants to say anything because everybody's afraid.
Nobody wants to say anything. Yeah, a member of a lodge in the South, and I will leave the state and the lodge, of course, their names out of it. But he stated to me that they would never let a Prince Hall Mason in because they are taught that there's black masonry and white masonry, and the two should never mix. And I said, I've never heard of masonry being defined by any man's ethnicity.
Right.
And he said, well, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, what's black masonry? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I have no idea.
I've been in a lodge before. It looks great to me. It looks the same, recognizable.
It does.
I can't. I'm like I've been talking. I'm trying to bring up with my worshipful master in the next few weeks. I'm wondering if we can get together and do some joint degree work with the Prince Hall Lodge in Waukegan.
Well, actually, the Grand Lodge of Indiana and the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Indiana are conducting such a degree April 27th of 2013 in the Indianapolis, Indiana Masons Hall. I believe it's called Freemasons Hall, actually. It's called a unity degree. And it's a joint degree where they will raise a brother to the sublime degree of Master Mason. The Grand Lodge of Indiana will open the lodge and perform the first section of the degree. And a lodge from the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Indiana will perform the second section of the degree and close the lodge.
That's going to be excellent. I already know it.
There's no way I'm missing it.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be.
But that's when we talk about traveling as Masons, every opportunity I get to travel somewhere where I've not been before Masonically, I make it my point to go, because there's something there that's going to be different than something where I'm at that is going to contribute to my overall philosophical insight. And when we talk about the journey of Masonry, we talk about exploring our own selves. It's actually an inward journey. And that's why the lack of visitation in the Southern Grand Lodges are a problem, because it's inhibiting potential enlightening growth, individual growth of the men of that area. And it's not the Grand Lodges collectively, it's left to the majority, as you know, we're a democracy in our lodges. Majority rules, so it's not all. But the depiction of the lack of recognition between the two Grand Lodges in the South gives the presumption that it's all, because I remember the illustrious Steve Shanks said one time to me, he said, every Master Mason from Medina, every Master Mason that walks around displaying any kind of Masonic pin or anything, displaying that we're a member of the fraternity, demonstrate themselves as an ambassador of the fraternity.
Absolutely.
And I say, what is the United States saying to the world if we have Grand Lodges that do not recognize one another in the southern states, but yet we have over 40 other states that do share recognition?
Yeah.
It says something, whether we want to or not.
It's what it is.
Absolutely.
You know, they're going to look at it like these guys are stuck back in the Dark Ages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll tell you one other thing is I was very hesitant about writing this book because of how it might be perceived. In fact, I still, while it's going through editing, I still have that air of doubt in my seat of consciousness, my gut,
oh, I know.
about about how it's perceived. But I feel just as I suppose every other Master Mason throughout the centuries that have stood against what they felt was wrong or an injustice. Every war has been led by or has been in part of members of the fraternity standing for what's right. And I said to myself, well, I'm saying what needs to be said.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to do it in the most, and I'm trying to say it in the most Masonic manner, in conformity with, of course, my Masonic obligations, the bylaws and rules of our Grand Lodge. But I'm saying what needs to be said, hopefully in the best interest that I see, that can help the fraternity.
Well, it's like there's a tarnish on the carpet, and people walk by it every single day, and they see it, and they see it, and they see it. Nobody does anything about it. And then one day somebody stands up and says, "Hey, can I make a motion? We clean that." And everybody's gonna either go, I was hoping somebody would bring that up. I don't think, I think it's a great idea that you're doing the book, and I think that. I don't think you're going to get anybody going, now why did this guy have to go and bring up the stain? But if anybody says that, I mean, they're wrong. It's plain and simple. I think what you're doing is commendable. I think it's going to be a great read. I can't wait for it to come out. So it's going to be a great book, I think. You're going to be calling a light to, like I said, an elephant in the room. And sometimes you just got to stand up and say what needs to be said. So
absolutely.
Now, as far as the book goes, you said it's in editing now. When can we expect the book?
Well, they say you cannot rush good things.
You can't.
So I would suspect that we could see the book as early as early May. Like I said, it is in editing, and I'm going to let the editor take their time because I do want to make sure that I wrote the book with passion, and sometimes when you write with passion, you can definitely get some run-on sentences here and there and some grammatical errors.
I know about grammatical.
So with that being said, I'm hoping to see the book on the shelves by early May. I would say early May.
Very cool. And then anybody listening, where could we get the book? Are we going to do Amazon, or are we doing?
It is definitely going to be on Amazon. We are, depending on how well it's received initially, it probably could end up in Barnes and Nobles as well.
Okay.
That's where we would ultimately like to see the book. But I think the initial sales is going to determine the more widely distribution of it. It will be advertised in the Scottish Rite Journal, and of course in the Living Stones magazine, which they can, if anyone wants to subscribe to the magazine, they can get a paper copy, or they can get an electronic copy, and all they have to do is go to www.livingstonesmagazine.com. And there is a tab for a subscription. The owner and editor of the paper, Right Worshipful Brother Robert Hurd from the Grand Lodge of Colorado, also makes available on that website free articles as well. One articles that people seem to really want to take another look at. He makes those available from time to time. So.
Yeah, like I said, you had sent me a few of the Living Stone magazine articles that you wrote, and the magazine in general is fantastic. Anybody listening, you know that sometimes we trail off into the esoteric a little bit, and
yes, we do.
There's no shortage of that in the Living Stones magazine. In fact, I read an article that one of the ones that you sent over. That was dealing with DMT and those kind of things.
Oh, yes.
Man, talk about a mind-blowing article. It was just great.
I feel so privileged to even be a staff writer for the magazine because there's such phenomenal Masonic minds that write for that magazine. Authors from Tim Hogan, Cliff Porter, Jason Marshall, John S. Nagy. These are minds that I hope to one day even get close to understanding. So I feel like the young pup being schooled most times.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's like we've been Masons for less than, well, you're coming up on 10 years and I'm less than 10 years, but we just dove in, and so we know all these people of affluence and these things, and it's one of those things where you see the people that you hope to be as good as someday, and it's a struggle every day to try to meet that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the beautiful thing is all the esoteric and insightful articles, their main purpose is to get you to think about yourself and reflect on your own actions. And as we say, keep ourselves circumscribed within due bounds. And these articles try to create a way that you can define your due bounds and your place within that circle. So,
yep.
I find myself reading them. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Well, so everybody listening, again, we're waiting for this book on Amazon.com and Barnes and Nobles, and as soon as it's out, let me know, and we'll put a link up on the website wcypodcast.com, and we'll have a link there for Charles Harper's new book coming out, and also check out the Living Stones magazine. Living Stones, is it just livingstones.com?
Absolutely, livingstonesmagazine.com.
Many thanks again to Brother Charles Harper for taking the time to speak with us today. Very, very well-established and very educated Mason. Can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. As I said, I'm humbled to even be on the show, so the honor is definitely mine.
Hopefully we'll have you back on again, maybe after the book drops, and we can talk about how people receive the book, and we'll talk a little bit more.
Absolutely. Thank you. It would be a privilege.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Take care.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview, and it brings us to this week's famous Freemason, Julius Adler. Born December 3rd, 1892, passed away on October 3rd, 1955, was an American publisher, journalist, and United States Army general. Adler was born on December 3rd in 1892 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the son of Harry Clay Adler and Ada Oakes. After graduating from Princeton University in 1914, he was employed by the New York Times. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in April of 1917, was promoted to captain in August of 1917, and served as company commander in a 306th Infantry Regiment, 77th Division, on the Western Front, seeing action in Lorraine, Vessel, and the Meuse-Argonne offensives. Adler, by then a major, was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross after an action in St. Juvin on 14th of October 1918. Adler returned to the New York Times in May of 1919, served as vice president and treasurer, becoming general manager in 1935, after the death of his uncle, Adolph Oakes. Having received promotions to lieutenant colonel in 1923 and colonel in 1930, the Army Reserve, Adler was reactivated in October of 1940 to serve as the commander of the 113th Infantry Regiment, 44th Division at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Promoted to brigadier general in July of 1941, from September to 1941, he was assistant divisional commander. 6th Infantry, Adler was relieved from duty on the 17th of November 1944 because of his illness. He served as commanding general of the 77th Division, Army Reserve, from November 1946 to 1948, receiving promotion to Major General on the 24th of January 1948, and was president of the Senior Army Reserve Commanders Association from 1949 to 1951. Adler was the president and publisher of the Chattanooga Times and general manager of the New York Times until his death on October 3, 1955. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Section 2, Site 4957A, Map O, Grid W32.5. He was a member of Justice Lodge number 753 of the 6th Manhattan Masonic District in New York City. That's it for this week. Remember to find us on Facebook and follow on Twitter at Whence Came You. We're also on just about every other social network out there, so find your favorite social network and type in WCY Podcast or Whence Came You, and we're probably there. Additionally, I'd like to just mention the Android and Apple apps, which let you listen streaming. You support the show with the cost of the app, and what you get in return is, of course, streaming access, but also bonus features like Masonic wallpapers for your device and the research papers that we read on the show. Also, if you'd like to help out and apps aren't your thing, we do have a donate to the show button, which is run through PayPal, and you can find that on our website at www.wcypodcast.com. Also, if you're into healthy living, fitness equipment, and stuff like that, you can check out our link to Onnit Labs, which is on our website as well. And they make up all kinds of great supplements, vitamins, fitness equipment that, to be quite honest with you, I use a few of them. Please also remember to check out the midnightfreemasons.blogspot.com, where we publish 3 new pieces each week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We just wrapped up James Fry's series called Sons of the East, which was very enlightening. It was some ancient detective work, really. That being said, if you have any pieces that you'd like to have featured on the website, go ahead and email me at wcypodcast@gmail.com, and we'll take it from there. That's it, and everybody stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.